Hi everyone, this is Julie Bruns. Welcome to the Peace and Possibilities podcast. I want you to thrive and be happy, peaceful, and content, no matter where you are on your journey. This podcast shares stories that will show you how it can be done, no matter what your circumstances. You'll be inspired and come away with a new spark of an idea. Never forget, anything is possible. New episodes are released every Wednesday. Subscribe, rate us, and leave us a review. This helps others find our content and get happier sooner. To possibility and beyond. Welcome to this episode of the Peace and Possibilities podcast. I am here with Dominick Purnomo. Dominick, am I saying your last name right?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so I heard of Dominick through a past guest on my podcast, Joseph Carr. He was on my podcast back in the fall of 2019, and I was asking some people that have been on the podcast before, hey, if you know anyone who loves what they do, let me know. I'd love to have them on my podcast, because that's really only the only prerequisite to being on my podcast is people that love what they do. And you were the only person actually that Joseph told me about. So welcome. Yeah, he said you have to talk to Dominick. I'm like, all right. And that was enough for me. So I'm happy to have you. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So let's talk about what you're doing and how you got to where you are. First tell us what you do, and then if that road, I'm guessing, was a straight line or a curvy line into, like when you started out, what you thought you were going to be doing versus what you're doing now. So let's start with that.
So today I'm a second generation restaurateur. I own 2 restaurants in Albany, New York, in the capital. I'm a wine director and a sommelier by trade. Yono's is a fine dining restaurant, sort of world-class dining, has about 1,000 selection wine list, has been named one of the top 100 restaurants in the United States. James Beard nominated 3 times, amongst other things. And then our sister restaurant is a little more casual brasserie, which is actually adjacent to Yono's. And it's a little more of a livelier environment, has sort of a bustling bar and, just wooden top tables, something that people could come in for lunch or happy hour, or, come in for pre-theater, post-theater, come in for dinner, date night, business meeting, sort of, can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So, but certainly definitely a community gathering space there. So my route was probably maybe a little more straight than some people, but certainly took some detours along the way. As I said, I'm a second generation restaurateur. My father's an immigrant from Indonesia. My mother's first generation Italian American, and they met, settled here in Albany, and my father worked in restaurants and then had the opportunity to buy out one of the places that he worked, and that was in 1982. So I was 2 years old at that. I just turned 40 last week, so still adjusting to this new age bracket. But so my parents opened up Yono's in 1986. So in my teenage years, I would go down and help out. Probably got in the way more than anything, but bus tables and help run food and things like that. When I went to college, I originally went for a liberal arts degree, which I was going to parlay into what I thought was going to be law at the time. I really enjoyed anything that had to do with political science and law, in the high school classes that I took. That really intrigued me. I enjoyed, arguing both sides of an argument, et cetera. So I did that for a year and a half. And then, my parents had always encouraged both myself and my sister not to be in the restaurant business. You don't have weekends, you don't have holidays, you don't have nights.
I was just going to ask you that, because I was going to ask you, so you started young in the restaurant because you saw your parents doing it. And did you even have when you were young and just busting tables and stuff, you're like, yeah, I think I want to do this one day, or you're like, no, this isn't for me?
I'm not sure. There's always, there was always something that I found really seductive about sort of having, about taking care of people. You know what I mean? That hospitality gene, where making other people happy makes you happy.
Right.
Knowing somebody could come in and have had a bad day at work or had an argument with their spouse, or, one of the kids is sick and they come into you for, 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever it is. And they leave, they forget about those problems for the time that they're with you, and they're enjoying themselves and they're present, and they leave feeling better than they walked in. And to me, there was always something that drew me to that. I was always, call it a codependent or what, but I always making other people happy made me happy. So, and that started at a relatively young age. So I think, I think I always kind of gravitated towards that. And I think that certainly, helping people and giving people a better situation is something that, that you can certainly do, studying law as well. But, I'd go back home on, Christmas or holiday breaks and summer breaks, stuff like that. And I, always go back and find work at the restaurant, to make some going out money. But, I always enjoyed it, and it never felt like a job, and I certainly knew the downsides of the industry, what I mean? The hours involved, the sacrifices that you make on both a personal and professional level, what I mean? We certainly, we never, we never needed anything as growing up, but there's certainly, it's not like we had, all the, the things that maybe some of the other kids had. So I certainly knew my parents worked hard. But, at the end of the day, they put a roof over our head. We were clothed, we were fed. We still, did family things together and vacation, stuff like that. But, there's maybe the kids on the other side of town who, grew up in the bigger houses and stuff like that. And, maybe that wasn't always in the cards for somebody in the restaurant business because, while there are some restaurateurs who are hugely successful and go on to operate several restaurants, the reality of this business is, what people see when they come in at 7:00 on a Saturday night and the place is bustling and, you're walking around and, shaking hands and, kissing cheeks pre-COVID, of course. But when they see that action and they think that's all it is, that is 2% of what owning and operating a restaurant is.
Yes, it's a small percentage, but it's obviously enough. Because just by what you said, like it never felt like a job, and you love that feeling of making other people happy. It's such a small percentage. My husband and I both worked in the restaurant business for a long time, so I totally get what you're saying. And once you kind of catch that bug, you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. It's fast paced. It's being around people, and if you like people, obviously it's a good thing too. Mm. It's such a small percentage, but it has to be enough for you to do all those other things and sacrifice all that other time and effort to be in that space where you're like, okay, this is what I love about it. It still has to be at top of your mind, right?
Yeah, for certain. Service, and greeting guests and making sure that they're cared for and taken care of. And I think the team, I have 52 employees between both restaurants. So I think leading the team and trying to coach the best out of them that you can do is also a huge driver for me. I played 2 sports in both high school and college. So, I'm a big sort of, rah-rah cheerleader, locker room kind of guy. So it's, I really enjoy, the collaboration and the teamwork and motivating each other. And, when I'm down, you pick me up, and when you're down, I pick you up. And I think that's part of it too, that sort of drew me, that is playing those competitive organized sports that, sort of that there's a lot of aspects that you can draw parallels to between, team sports in a restaurant. Everybody has, playing football, everybody had their everybody has their
role.
Exactly, their role. This is who you block, this is where you run, this is, what you do. Same thing in a restaurant. You know what I mean? Your job is to do this, your job is to do this, your job is to do this. And, if everybody does their job, you succeed.
It's interesting. I've never heard it because been around sports. We have 2 boys that play sports too. So, and we both worked in the restaurant business, but I've never heard it compared to a team sport. But you're right. It is very similar. Everyone has their own role. And at the end of the night, you sit down and go, we worked our butts off. We had a great night. Everyone made a lot of money. Everyone left here happy. And it's kind of like winning in a sport. That's a cool analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's certainly nights where, in the restaurant where, thankfully they're fewer and far between, but, where, something goes wrong. The wrong food gets dropped at the wrong table, or somebody spills wine all over the woman's cashmere sweater, or so those you take those lumps with you, just as you do in a team sport, but you take them collectively. You do it as you do it as a team, because it's not one person. And maybe somebody fumbled the ball, but you're taking that L as a team. So I think there's, like I said, there's a lot of parallels.
Interesting. So how did you go from I think I'll study law in college to running your own restaurants?
I had drawn, like I said, I was always drawn to the business. I think after one point, I don't know if I just got frustrated and said, I don't know that I can stay in school at this point. So I was in my third semester of college. So at this point, I don't know that I can do this for 6 more years. And that's when I switched over to hotel restaurant management.
Okay.
Proceeded to take that, that path. And then after college, came to work with my parents. I'm at their restaurant full time. So this was in 2000. So did that for 5 years, worked with them. And then at that point, sort of had taken over all the day-to-day operations. And then in 2004, we were approached by a developer who was building a new Hilton property in downtown Albany, and had approached us and said, "Hey, we want to. We have a space for a restaurant. We don't want it to be a hotel restaurant. We want it to be something that's uniquely Albany, and we want it to be something that, people don't look at it as a hotel restaurant. They look at it as a restaurant that's next to a hotel." So at that point, with the size of the space, and sort of not saying that, fine dining is trending down a little bit, but, people have changed in the last 15 or 20 years how they dine. A lot of times fine dining gets relegated to, expense accounts during the week, entertaining, and, on the weekends, it's special occasion, birthdays, anniversaries, celebrations, things like that. So that's when I created DP Brasserie, which is our casual sister restaurant. I want it to be something that the people who came in maybe once a month would come here once a week. If they came in 3 times a year, they'd come in maybe, 3 or 4 times, every couple of months. So at that point, we relocated Yono's, opened up DP, and this was in March of 2006. So we just celebrated 14 years this past March. Coincidentally, the day we got shut down, we were ordered to close by the governor for all restaurants across the state. Was on our 14th anniversary, so it was a little bittersweet, obviously.
Of course, yeah. So now you have these successful restaurants, and I'm sure you're navigating a whole new world with all this COVID stuff. What's your so you graduate, you're working at your parents' restaurant, and then you decide you're gonna, obviously have your own and venture off and run your own restaurants and stuff. Are you thinking along the way, I have what it takes, or you're like, oh, I saw my parents, so I know what I need to do, I'm educated, I got this? Or were you like, are there certain things that you considered making you successful along the way, or did you have to kind of learn as you went? Were you like,
I think it's a little bit of both. I had the foundation growing up. Then I got the formal education, where you sort of learn maybe a little more nuts and bolts. My parents, my mother went to school for musical theater. She was going to be a teacher. And obviously, my father had worked on cruise ships for 7 years for Holland America. So he knew that aspect of restaurant business, but, not until they had their own did they really kind of learn it. So I had sort of seen the mistakes that perhaps that they had made and the things that made them successful. And at the same point is, what I learned in school, I could take that. And then also for me, having grown up, I don't know, am I a millennial? Am I a Gen Xer? I'm not sure. I'm sort of on the cusp. Yeah. But, to have technology at our fingertips, so for me, a lot of it was, like going online and reading wine lists of, some of these wonderful restaurants around the country and around the world, and reading their menus and sort of getting inspired that way, looking at their dining rooms, seeing how their staff moved, probably, and I still do this today. You know what I mean? I get inspired by the restaurants. When I travel, I'm always looking for the angles, so to speak, just to see how they do things, and always getting inspired by things like that. Certainly, I continue to do continuing education and conferences, and as much information still, after 20 years full time in this industry, there's always still, it's such a fast paced industry, not only like the night service, but also, how, like sometimes I look at pictures of food we did 5 years ago and I'm embarrassed by it. You know what I mean? But it was progressive at the time, but now it's like, it's so dated, so I think always, sort of doing things like that, making sure that, we continue to stay cutting edge and continue to be leaders in the industry. I think it's collaborative, and the restaurant industry, I think, is unique in a lot of ways, because all of the restaurateurs that I know, we work together. We share information, and we try to help. While at the end of the day, we're still competing for the same dining dollar. No matter how much you love a restaurant, you're not going to eat there every time you go out, right? But for example, let's say car dealerships. You could go and every 3 years get a new car at that same dealership, for that. So, there tends to be, or, grocery stores, people, tend to go to like the same grocery store, or maybe they have one main one they go to in a secondary one. Where restaurants, somebody who's at my restaurant on Thursday is going to be at your restaurant next Tuesday, and vice versa. And certainly if we can help, like I knew I had somebody coming into my restaurant a few weeks ago. Actually, no, geez, this is months ago. This is pre-COVID, and I knew that they were regular at a friend's restaurant. So I said, hey, what can you tell me about him? He kind of ticked off a bunch of things. Like, these are the kind of wines he likes. This is the food he likes. He likes, Pellegrino water, da, 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 da. You know what I mean? And so like, this other restaurant said, oh, I don't have much to tell you, but no, he wanted to make sure that guest had, and he had recommended him to come to us. So it was, we work together in ways like that, which I think is unique in a lot of industries that tend to be much more cutthroat and tend to be much more, proprietary.
Yeah. It sounds too like you have a, like you care obviously, but you're always looking for ways to, like you said, innovate and get inspired and get ideas. And it sounds like you're constantly ahead of the game. I mean, you see it on TV shows all the time. People buy a restaurant, like, I always wanted to own one, and they had no idea how much hard work went into it. And they just kind of like went on automatic pilot and then wondered why they weren't successful. But you're still like the opposite, where you're always going, what can we do different? What can we do better? What can we improve? How can we collaborate? What can I find out about people? And that's what's going to keep people coming back. So it sounds like you have a unique perspective. I've worked for a lot of people, and I haven't really met that many people that have thought about it in the way you're thinking about it. So I'm sure that's definitely contributing to your success. So
yeah,
kudos to you.
I appreciate those kind words. Thank you.
Yeah. It's definitely a gift. And it's just like anything. If you really love what you're doing, you're going to go online and read about it. Say, I'm the same way. No matter what I'm working on during the day, it all comes back to these topics that I'm talking about. And I could read about them all day long. I could do no work and just read and learn all day long still after all this time. And I think that's what makes it contagious too. And that's what makes people want to be around you, because you truly do care. You're not just like, hey, how's it going? And, I hope you spend a lot of money tonight. It makes a difference to you.
Yeah. And I think having a meaningful connection with people, and whether it's, my staff, whom, I would say the average tenure of people between both restaurants is probably somewhere around 6 years. We've had people that have worked as long as 22 years with us.
That's saying something.
Yeah. And I think, because we care, and you realize that also they're a reflection upon you and your brand and your family and all those things. Because, as much as I would love to be at the restaurant, before COVID, we were open from, noon until 11:30 at night, 6 days a week. So, as much as I would love to be there, 80 plus hours a week, I have a wife and 3 young children who also need to see their father. So, I need to know that I can trust them, and that, that they feel invested into this as much as I do.
Yeah.
Maybe obviously not financially, but, that they have as much pride in, making sure that, the little things, making, why are there fingerprints on the front door? You know what I mean? The fact that when I see a staff member go and like wipe down the front door without me having to say it, like, to me, there's a huge, paternal sense of pride for that.
Yes.
And
those people that care you want those people that care, and you, obviously they're a reflection of you, but the more successful you are, the more successful they're going to be in their jobs.
Exactly. And I think that's, one of the things in the restaurant we always talk about is, the difference between service and hospitality. Service is the forks on the left, the knives on the right, the wine glasses to the right, you serve from the left, clear from the right, don't spill wine on, the tablecloth.
Yeah.
But the hospitality is that genuine connection with the guest. What are you doing for them? It could be as simple as the way that you speak to them on a phone. It could be, we talked about, sort of connecting the dots and making sure that, that they feel a sense of ownership too. There's nothing that gives us more pride than when a guest says our restaurant. This is our restaurant. We come here for our birthdays, our anniversaries, our kids' graduations, whatever it is. When they have that sense of pride that there's a big special occasion coming up and they don't even think about where they're going to go. They're just, they make the reservation. That is that connection that, you can continually try to build with people, where they feel that sense of ownership. We talked about that with the staff just moments ago, but, where the guests feel that, that they feel that, and then they come in with friends and they say, and they see how well they're treated and they're welcomed, and they say that, this is why this is our restaurant. And then, hopefully that you build that connection with their friends. And then, that's sort of, you can put all the commercials you want on television or, on Instagram or, Facebook these days, but, it's, if you can get them in the door once, that's often the hardest part is getting them in the door once. Once you have them, you hope that you can continue that, once you have that relationship, that initial contact, you hope that you can give them reason to come back, often.
Yeah. Smart. No, it's smart. So, what advice would you have for people, young, you said you have 3 young kids, but so they're in college and they're trying to figure out what they want to do, or they graduated and it's not what they thought college was going to be, and they want to do something. What advice would you have for someone, your kids and other people that are listening that are searching for a meaningful career where they can use their strengths like you did? Yeah.
There's a lot of people that aren't going to want to hear this, but I am sort of anti-college at this point. Not that I'm anti-college. I just don't think it's for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's so many people who, spend, $150,000 of, go into $150,000 in debt, or, spend $150,000 of their parents' money, and they come out of it after 4 years wondering like, okay, well now what, and I just think that, I think that there's so many more opportunities today, especially with technology, that, I just feel like there's got to be a better way. You just saw Harvard announce yesterday that they are going completely online for the 2020-2021 school year. And they're still going to charge their $49,000 a year, per year tuition, which to me, like, okay, forget the college experience, forget the room and board, forget, in-person learning. So if Harvard, arguably, the most prestigious, university in America, if not the world, if online learning is good enough for them, it makes you rethink this whole thing. And obviously there's reasons to it, but if they think that they can give the same product and charge the same amount of money virtually, and I think that there's something to be said about that. I think
I hear what you're saying. A lot of people, and a lot of people I've talked to, there are people that, you could probably name 5 people that have their own businesses and don't have a formal college education. Some people don't even have a formal high school degree. They got their GED at some point. I'm not saying I'm recommending that either, of course.
Yeah, no, of course.
But it doesn't. It's all about the passion. It's about what the work you want to put into it and what you want to learn about. And I agree with you. I think college is important, but it's not for everyone. And going into that, and that's not going to make you happy. And you come out of there, you're not even going to use what you learned for your career. Then you're right. You're starting in the hole for something you don't even want to do.
Yeah, do I think a doctor needs to go to college and medical school? Absolutely. Do I think, that there are other careers like, somebody who's going to design a building just should have a degree in engineering. But I think, trades are important. I think internships and, apprenticeship programs and things like that, I think are huge. And, like I said, not everybody's in a position to shell out, 6 figures for college. And the worst part about it is, and, we see this a lot in our industry, people go to culinary school for 2 years, they're $100,000 in debt, and they're getting a job that maybe pays them $30,000 a year. Now, factor in an apartment, a car, gas, food. How long is it going to take you to pay down that $100,000 debt at God knows what the interest rates are that, Sally Mae or whomever are charging these days. So, I think it puts people at a severe disadvantage coming out of school. So for me, I think, don't automatically assume that you have to go to college. Look at what your passions are. Look at, what makes you excited, what gets you going, what fires you up. And it may not be something that you need a 40-year or a 4-year degree for, or even maybe a 2-year degree. And I'm just trying to think, when I was, 18 years old, 17 years old, like looking at colleges, is that, what I mean? Certainly I had the help of my parents, but, is that a decision a 17-year-old should be making? And I'm looking at this now. I mean, my kids are 7, 6, and 3, but, we're still far off from that, but, before you know it, it'll be here. So I think about that. I just think is, find something that you're passionate about and try and find something that feeds that passion, because, that's going to keep you motivated.
100%. Yeah. It's great advice, to be telling your kids, for sure. And yeah, I agree. Our older one just graduated from college last year, and Mom, what if I picked the wrong thing? I'm like, you probably are going to pick the wrong thing. You're 17, you're 18 years old. You couldn't possibly know. It is so overwhelming. And I agree with what you're saying. It's not an easy task, and it's not even something they should be even in test with. And then it's like you said, spending all this money for something they're not even sure they want to do. So, all right. So final question for you. What do you wish, if anything, that you've learned or that you would have learned earlier in your career or your life?
I think for me, if there's a couple things I could have redone, it would have been probably to take some time between college and settling into a career to like go travel and explore a little more. And done it like in a working fashion. Like in hindsight, I would have loved to, maybe take 6 months and go work in a vineyard during the day and go work at a restaurant at night in Bordeaux or in Tuscany or something like that, just to have a little more, maybe a little more hands-on experience and just seeing things in other cultures and how those things work. I've worked in many vineyards, through my time in the industry, but I think, having to be able to do that, because as soon as I got to college, it's like, all right, I want to get to work. I want to make money, Would I have a little bit different of an experience or perspective today? Perhaps, you know what I mean? But I think it would have been, maybe call it a gap year or a gap, 18 months, but not just do it and go and party in Ibiza, but, go and do something that, you're trying to find that passion and keep that burning. So I think something along those lines, would have been in hindsight, I would have liked to have taken 12 months or 18 months and gone abroad and, maybe go to 2 or 3 different places around the world, and gotten maybe a winery job and a restaurant job concurrently, to sort of build upon that. I think would be, if I could do one thing different, maybe that would be it.
I think that's also so important for our young people too, to have, instead of just you pick on a degree or a job, you go to school or you go trade and you learn it, but that's usually when you haven't had any even experience with it. If you went and did it even unpaid for a month or 2, you might say, oh my gosh, I don't want this to be my life. I know right away I don't want it to be my life, but some people don't do that until they're out of college. They've already spent the money, and now they're like, what did I just get into? And I was a good example of that. I was teaching in a school with my teaching degree, 2nd graders, and I came home and I said to my dad, oh my gosh, I can't teach 2nd graders for the rest of my life. Like that's the wrong age for me if I'm going to be a teacher. It has to be older kids. Like sure. I just had that epiphany. But if I had gone there even for a week when I was in college, or just like 18 years old, just to like even observe, I probably would have known that pretty quickly. But
and I wish, these are the things that in high school, and again, it's been 20 plus years since I was in high school, but in hindsight, there's a lot of things that like, did I really need to learn that? Because I haven't used that since. But, would have been nice if I had, from, I don't know, maybe the first half of your senior year, 2 days a week from noon till the end of the day, you go and whatever you think you want to go to college for, that's your time to like go get an internship somewhere and at least get your feet wet a little bit, even if it's, 6 hours a week, for 10 weeks, at least, you're exposed to it. But if you're like, I like to watch House and ER, now I want to be a doctor. Well, guess what? That's not necessarily what you see on TV. If that's the only exposure to it, I think that there's, so probably some other ways to learn more about what you want to do before you, commit 4 years of your life and 6 figures of either your or your parents' money into it.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think that maybe with all of the stuff going on with the pandemic and stuff, maybe this ends up being I'm just having this thought now, but like all of the changes that are going to be coming down that are already happening too with universities and college and this insane price that everyone has to pay. Maybe this is one of the gifts that's going to come out of it. Like, it doesn't have to be as expensive as it is. It doesn't have to be the commitment it's been. It's crazy to have these kids starting their lives with all this debt, and maybe this is one of the good things that can come from it.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Maybe that could be the silver lining to all this is sort of streamlining that process for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of your insight and ideas and wisdom today, Dominick. It's been fun talking to you.
Yeah, you as well, Julie. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so if people want to come to your restaurant in Albany, if they want to get to know a little bit more about you or what you do, how can they find you?
You can go to DominickPurnomo.com or at Dominick Purnomo on pretty much every single social media format there, except for TikTok. I'm not doing TikTok.
Yeah, me neither.
But Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, it's all there. And LinkedIn, of course. So,
well, I would love to one day come to your restaurant in Albany, New York. So I will put that on my list when it's safe to travel there. That's awesome. So thank you for your time today, and best of luck to you. I know you're going to do well no matter what happens because you have the right attitude. So kudos to you.
I appreciate the kind words. Thank you, Julie.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. If you love this content, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you found us on. You can get all my social media links in the description below. Help us keep the momentum going so that every person can live their lives happily, doing work they love.